Hi everyone, Dr. Jen back to answer your questions. As you know, I study animal behavior, but I like using what we know about animals to help everyone else solve some of their problems. Because it turns out other animals are pretty smart and they have some of the same problems we do. Now here's a common one that I get asked a lot. How do you know if someone's really digging you? I mean, it's not like we're these birds of paradise where the male's got moves like Jagger to woo a female. Or these laughing kookaburras. They laugh, they do. I think they like to play jokes on each other. Anyway, the male offers up a meal to feed the female in order to show her how interested he is. Or what about these gibbons that serenade each other every single day? Let's take a listen. Lovely. But wait a minute. Actually, we do all of these things. We do dance, we do cook, and some of us might actually sing every day, maybe in the shower. Since we also do all of these things, why do so many of us end up confused? Sometimes we end up confused because they were interested in us, but not for a relationship. More like a squirrel that was only trying to find a nut. Or that it could be like a ring-tailed lemur where you weren't their only love interest and they got distracted. I've worked with ring-tailed lemurs. They get distracted really easily and then they forget what they just saw. So it could be something like that. I think we all know that when someone is really interested in you for a long-term thing, they're usually working pretty hard to make sure you know it and that they're always in front of you in some kind of way, because they don't want you getting distracted by somebody else. What does all this focus and attention look like? Well, it can show up in a number of ways. The first way is constant communication, right? You get the little beep, beep, beep on your phone and you're like, oh, hearts, oh, LOL, oh, smooches. Great horned owls do this all the time. I mean, they're not texting. That would be weird. I'm studying them right now, and let me tell you, these raptors are talkers. Well, that's not really what they sound like. Here's what they sound like. All those hoots add up to a sign that a relationship is developing. A second way that we can tell that somebody is really, really interested in us is spending a lot of time together. This is not the same as spending a lot of time texting each other. It's actually seeing each other face to face, making plans, doing stuff out in the world. Barnacle geese have this down pat. I know, that probably wasn't the first thing that would come to mind, barnacle geese. Barnacle geese, they breed up in the high Arctic and they build their nests on these cliffs. It's a bit sad how the baby geese have to get down, but we won't be sad. Right now we're talking about love. Just as an aside, in the early 1500s and 1600s, people actually believed that these fully grown barnacle geese came from a barnacle. It was the most logical explanation for the sudden appearance of tons and tons of barnacle geese. Nobody knew about migration back then, so they thought that a full-grown goose just somehow magically came out of a barnacle. Of course, they did figure out later that this wasn't true, but the name stuck, and so now they're still called barnacle geese. Anyway, the point is that barnacle geese, which tend to mate for life, spend some time dating. And they have practice relationships unless they're lucky and find the one right off the bat. Okay, and these practice relationships involve them spending all of this time together. They do everything together. They go everywhere together. They're constantly together until they're not, because they broke up. Unless they didn't, because they mate for life. When they're dating another goose, they're doing it for reals. It's not practice, it's not play. They're doing it hardcore. The reality is that when someone is interested in you for a relationship, they want to spend time with you. They also want to introduce you to their friends. They're not just off with you alone. So if someone's only making time to see you 2 or 3 times a month, chances are pretty good that they're ruffling the feathers of another goose. The third way that we can tell, and this shows up in a lot of different ways, is simple but consistent gestures. Now we're not talking major romantic gestures like big trips or fancy presents, No, that is not the stuff of relationships. It's the very simple actions that are happening all the time. If you were a mouse, you would probably serenade. Isn't that lovely? I used to have mice when I was a kid. I loved mice. I didn't know at the time that they sang. If instead you were a shrike, you would just spear small animals and post them to a stake, a wooden stake or some other, a tree trunk or something else to show off to a female how great of a hunter you are in providing her food. I tend to do that. Not spear small animals, but actually cook and give food to someone that I'm really interested in. Some couples go out to dinner, some couples cook together, and sometimes one individual like me, likes to cook for the other person. You get the picture. It's all about food. Some couples like to go dancing. Now, I'm not talking about you dancing for another person. That's a different conversation. I'm talking about couples that like to go out dancing, and dancing together is a really great way to reinforce a bond. Grebes are notorious for their courtship dancing. It's essentially their version of the tango. Take a look. Look at how they mirror each other. Look at the coordination. If dancing or cooking or singing isn't your thing, not to worry. We could translate this broadly into just general affection. When you like someone and they like you, there's often a lot of touching going on. Now, I'm talking just nice, positive, friendly touching. Hugging, a gesture on the shoulder, brushing off some kind of dust or lint. So you're basically grooming them. You name it. There's always some kind of physical contact, hand holding, putting the arm around, and smooching. We're gonna talk about what makes good kissing good in another episode, but for now, trust me, there's tons of smooching going on. But it can be even simpler than that. It can be helping you with an unpleasant task, or listening to you talk about your day. When we look at other animals, we see clear signals whether or not there's a real and long-lasting love interest. Of course, this depends on the species and whether or not they form long relationships. Squirrels don't, by the way. Now, there's nothing wrong with a fling, but you've got to be well matched. If you're a barnacle goose in a situation with a squirrel, well, that's not really going to work out, is it? And I hate to break it to you, but as you've probably heard many times, if you're confused and you're even asking this question, there's a pretty good chance they're a squirrel and you're a barnacle goose. I know that sucks, but the faster you stop paying attention to someone that's not paying attention to you or focused on developing a relationship with you, the faster you can go out and find someone else who is interested in you. So stop asking and start looking elsewhere. Thanks for listening.